Only reason, and I'll tell you this, the only reason you should want to become a leader is to better the lives of others. And if you want to be a leader for any other reason than that, then do not get into leadership. You will literally, the world does not need another leader like that.
This is the L3 Leadership Podcast, episode number 210. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the L3 Leadership Podcast. My name is Doug Smith, and I am your host. I hope you're doing well. I know I'm just settling down from a crazy month, so it's great to get back into a routine and be back on the podcast. In today's episode, you'll hear a talk that I gave at the Pi Sigma Epsilon regional conferences. If you're unfamiliar with Pi Sigma Epsilon, they are a professional fraternity for students and industry professionals in marketing and sales management. They were founded in 1952 at Georgia State University. And as I mentioned, I had the privilege of speaking at all three of their regional conferences in Atlanta, in Pittsburgh, and Milwaukee, and I had an absolute blast. What I loved most was actually meeting the students. This thing, what was very clear was that these kids that I met are our future leaders. What I love about them is they chose to be there. They invested in themselves and their growth and development on purpose, and so they were there because they wanted to be, not because they had to be. And I was beyond impressed with every single student that I met and interacted with. And I also loved hearing just how much Pi Sigma Epsilon has actually transformed their lives and their college experience. So again, I can't speak highly enough of this organization. It was such an honor to partner with them. So the talk that I gave and that you're about to listen to answers the question, what I would tell myself if I could have coffee with my 20-year-old self. I get asked to coffee a lot with a lot of young leaders, and they essentially ask that question and say, hey, what lessons do I need to learn while I'm in my 20s? And so this lesson is a response to that question. But I don't think it'll just add value to you if you're in your 20s. I really believe these are foundational lessons that you have to get under your belt in life in order to be successful. So I really hope that the talk adds value to you. Before we dive in, just a quick announcement. I am so excited to let you know that we are hosting our first annual L3 One-Day Leadership Conference on Friday, March 15th, 2019 at the Marriott in Cranberry Township, just 30 minutes away from downtown Pittsburgh. And we have a killer lineup of speakers for you. So far, we have Matt Keller, who's the pastor of Next Level Church down in Fort Myers, Florida. We have Laura Ellsworth, who's been at L3 before, one of the best speakers I've ever heard. She gave one of the best talks at an L3 event, literally unbelievable leader. And Salim Gubril, who is the executive director of the Pittsburgh Promise, also phenomenal communicator. Listen, I'm just so excited for this. This conference is going to add so much value to your life as a leader, and I can't encourage you enough to bring your team as well. Your team will benefit. And we're just so excited. Our goal is to have 300 leaders in the room and just add massive value to each and every one of them. And so you can learn more about the conference and register yourself and your team at l3oneday.com. Again, that's l3oneday.com. And again, just plan on attending and bring your team Friday, March 15th, 2019. You will not regret it. I want to thank our other sponsor, Alex Toulandon. Alex is a full-time realtor with Keller Williams Realty. And if you are looking to buy or sell a house in the Pittsburgh market, Alex is your guy. He's a member and a supporter of L3 Leadership and would love to have an opportunity to connect with you. You can learn more about Alex at pittsburghpropertyshowcase.com. With that being said, let's dive right into the lesson, and I will be back at the end with a few announcements.
I do want to say it's an honor to be here. So I had the pleasure of being asked to speak at all of the regional conferences. Well, 3 of them. I guess there's more than that. But so I was in Atlanta last weekend. So how many of you are from down south that you made it all the way to Pittsburgh? I know there's a few. Thank you guys for making the trip. But I loved being with the students last week. And what I really love about you guys is that you're not here because you have to be. You're here because you want to be. And you're making an investment in yourself this weekend. And I speak to a lot of audiences. And I would rather speak to a room full of 3 leaders that want to be there and that are intentional with their lives than a stadium full of 30,000 people. And so I just want to say it's an honor to be here today, and I really hope that I add value to your life. Brief introduction, just to give you an overview. I am married to my high school sweetheart. Now you can all say, aw. So the girls are saying, aw. The guys are saying, how the heck did that happen? Like, how did you get her? And guys, I just want to tell you, there's hope for you, right? Like, there's hope, right? The best advice I ever got when I was single was, it only takes one, thank God, right? So that's my beautiful wife. You'll hear a little bit about our journey in a minute. That's my 2.5-year-old daughter, Olivia. She's the best. And that's our baby, 6-month-old daughter named Sophia. So I'm from Pittsburgh, so I was with them this morning. Right before I came here, we were watching Daniel Tiger. That's how I get motivated to speak. Actually, Daniel Tiger has some great lessons. You should just watch the show. But Vocationally, I work here for a nonprofit that's been on the north side of Pittsburgh since 1952. It's called Light of Life Rescue Mission. So we're a nonprofit that helps the homeless men, women, and children of Pittsburgh. We do everything from overnight shelter to meals to long-term recovery programs, education and employment, pretty much the whole gamut if you are out in need. And so I've been there for 8 years. I'm the director of development there, which means I'm in charge of all the sales and marketing in the nonprofit world, which is really fundraising, right? It's sales without commission. Anyway, anyone want to go into nonprofit fundraising? No one? A couple people? So I accidentally became a fundraiser. I accidentally ended up at this nonprofit. I won't go a lot into this, but they said, wow, you're really good with people. You should try fundraising. And they threw me in, and now I've been there for 8 years and absolutely love it. We have an $8 million budget, and I oversee all the marketing, PR, and fundraising. I also developed an organization. You'll hear why I developed it in my story, but called L3 Leadership. So we have multiple things, and on your tables there's a place where you guys can take notes and connect cards. So if you connect with me this morning and you're saying, hey, I would love to connect and learn more about what you're doing, your gift to me could be you filling out the connect cards there. My cell phone number's on there, my email, so if there's anything I could do to add value to you, let me know. But we have a podcast where I interview leaders pretty much every week. I also do a personal leadership lesson once a month, and then I actually record our talks from our events and put those on the podcast as well. We have over 200 episodes you can listen to. We have monthly leadership events here in our city where I bring in the best leaders that I can to share their best leadership content. And then our bread and butter is we have mastermind groups that meet all throughout our city, and I'll talk about those in a minute. So this all may not seem impressive at all, to be honest with you, but you might say, wow, you're doing a lot of things, but I think you'd be really, really surprised if you rewound my life to when I was 17 years old and what my life looked like then, because it certainly didn't look like my trajectory was going to land me where I am today. So growing up, just a brief background, when I was in middle school, my mom got a rare nerve disease in her legs. If you've ever had your feet fall asleep and had pins and needles, that's what my mom had 24 hours a day. That led to her being in a wheelchair and ultimately being in bed for most of her life. And so my life changed dramatically in middle school. My dad ended up having to work 2 jobs to get our family by financially. So my dad was never home. My mom was always in bed. So I went from having a normal family life to no boundaries, and I was able to do whatever I wanted, which when you're in middle school is really cool, but it's not so cool when you make bad decisions. And so started getting into drugs my summer of 8th grade year. But my 8th grade year, decided I would never amount to anything. My dad's a bus driver, and I just thought, hey, I'll be a bus driver or a janitor. Not that there's anything wrong with either of those things, but that's what I said, that's as much as I'm going to do in life. I'm going to be just following the footsteps of my father. So I went to summer school every single year just to get to the next grade, just partied and partied and partied. Found out my mom had a drug that she took called Oxycontins, which is synthetic heroin. I found out that people would pay a lot of money if I gave them the pills, and so became a drug dealer and started selling synthetic heroin in high school. Did that all throughout high school. Never got caught. What's up? Anyway. Anyway, I don't know why I said that. I don't have a filter all the time. But partied all throughout high school. But again, thought I was living the dream. And then so my senior year of high school, October 2002, my mom ended up passing away. And again, for me, I just spent every night drinking and getting high to numb the pain. And literally as a result of that, and I won't go deep into the story, but I went to a group that was meeting at a house. It was a group led by a mom. There was 150 kids that would go to this meeting every week. And I walked down the stairs and I saw this I used to say smoking hot. I try not to say that anymore. I saw this beautiful girl sitting on a couch, and I said, I'm going to this meeting every week. I decided to start going there. I didn't know it, and the girl was my wife. And just to let you know, I went home from that meeting that night and told all my high school buddies, I'm like, guys, I met my wife. I'm going to marry the girl I met tonight. And I just want to let you know I called my shot. What's up? So, yeah. I'm not recommending that you try to call your shot. That could end up really ugly. And anyways, so that night that I went to that group, my wife, Laura, who wasn't my wife at the time, told her mom, she said, that's one of the most influential kids in our high school. If he ever does something with his life, if he ever turns his life around, he could change the world. And so for whatever reason, her mom decided to start having me over for family dinners. Her dad works at Carnegie Mellon University. He's the director of admission there. He became a father figure in my life and a mentor. And so he actually met with me and said, Doug, you're going to go to college, which I wasn't planning on doing. He said, you're going to do something with your life. You're a leader, and you can do great things. And he became a mentor in my life. They brought me into an organization that developed another mentor, and literally spent my whole entire 20s developing into who I am today. Just so you know, you might say, when you see my wife, but it took me 10 years to become the man I needed to be to marry her. So, right, and I'll talk more about that later, but it took us 10 years because I had to grow up a lot, and you'll hear about that. So, what I want to share with you today is over the course of my 20s, I really feel like I built a solid foundation to build the rest of my life on. And I get asked to coffee a lot by a lot of young leaders, and they want me to teach them, right? And so my goal today is just if I could sit down and have coffee with all of you and give you direction and give you guidance and teach you something about how you should build a foundation for your life in your 20s, this is what I would tell you today. The theme, we do a podcast. The theme, I'll talk more about that, but the theme of this whole conference is inspire, right? And to be honest with you, I love inspiration. I wake up every day inspired. I wake up every day fired up. I love firing people up, but inspiration enough is never enough. And I like being fired up, but if you're fired up and have nothing practical to do, then you're going to go nowhere really fast. And so my goal today is to not only inspire you, but I also want to give you practical tools that you can start executing today, things you can actually do that'll change your life and build a foundation and help you to be successful. So I hope you get inspired, but more importantly, I hope you find something that you can actually execute on. So if I could sit down and have coffee with you, what would I tell you? Number one, I would tell you the first thing you need to do is you need to wake up to the reality that this life is the only life that you get. Wake up to the reality that this life is the only life that you get. Here's a novel thought. One day, you're going to die. And everyone knows that, but nobody believes it. In fact, if you believed it, you would live differently. And fortunately or unfortunately, I had to learn this lesson at a young age. I was 17 when my mom passed away, and she was 55 years old. What I didn't mention was 2 years after I met my mother-in-law, my wife's mom, she got diagnosed with cancer and ended up passing away. She was 47 years old. I'm currently 33 years old. If I only get as many years as my mother-in-law got, I have 14 years left. 14 years, that's pretty scary. Now, obviously, I hope I live a long life. I'm going to take care of myself, all those things. But none of us are promised tomorrow. But we all act as if we're going to be here forever. And so you need to wake up to the fact that one day you're going to die. Someone said this, and I see so many people living like this. Someone once said, first, I was dying to finish high school and start college. Do you guys remember that? Anyone in your senior year, it's like, just get me out of here. And then, this may be some of you now, I was dying to finish college and start working. Is anyone in that boat right now? Man, just get me out, right? And then, I was dying to marry and have children. And then I was dying for my children to grow old enough for school so I could go back to work. And then I was dying to retire. And now I'm dying. And suddenly I realize I forgot to live. I forgot to live. Guys, if I could challenge you with anything today, don't forget to live. Mae West said this is one of my favorite quotes. She said, you only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough. You only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough. So let's get to the practical, right? That's enough to light a fire under you. But what does that actually look like? How can we live our lives in such a way that once is enough? A few things. The first thing I would tell you is just what my father-in-law told me. You need to dream big and go for it. But I also add determine the price to pay. Dream big and go for it, but determine to pay the price. Right? I mixed up my words. Dream big and go for it, but determined to pay the price. Something that changed my life. So I'm a speaker. One of my heroes is a guy named John Maxwell. You may or may not heard of him. He's a leadership guru, author, has written over 100 books, literally speaks all over the world, is influencing nations. Pretty awesome. If I could be anyone, but I don't want to be him, I want to be me. But if I could be anyone on the planet, I would want to be John Maxwell. And he said when he was in his 40s or 50s, a young man came up to him after he spoke at a conference, and he said, John, I want to do what you do. And John said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, you have a pretty sweet gig. People paid X amount of dollars to be here. You get to sit up on stage and talk to them and invest in their lives. And he always sucks on cough drops when he talks. He's like, you get to suck on a cough drop. Like, that's a pretty sweet gig. I want to do what you do. And John smiled and he said, maybe it's time for a teaching. He said, I understand that you want to do what I do. Trust me, I do. It's a good life. I enjoy my life. But the question isn't, do you want to do what I do? The question is, do you want to do what I did so you can do what I do? Do you want to do what I did so you can do what I do? See, with every dream, there's a price to pay, right? Small dreams, here's what I found. Small dreams have small prices, but big dreams have big prices. And some of you have small dreams, some of you have big dreams. The size of your dream doesn't matter. But if you just have a dream, that's not enough, right? If you go to sleep, you have a dream. Everybody has a dream. And so what's my encouragement to you? This is the progression I see when it comes to having a dream. Number one, you have the dream. Number two, you have to figure out the price of the dream. How do you do that? Ask somebody who's doing what you want to do. I've never had a chance to sit down with John Maxwell, but if I did, the first question I would ask him is, John, tell me the price. What is the price that you've had to pay to sit in the seat that you're sitting in today? Whatever area you want to go into. I know a lot of you want to go into sales and marketing, right? Find the gurus in your city, and I'll talk more about how to get meetings with them in a second. But find them and say, hey, what is the price you paid to get there? And if you were me in my 20s, what steps would you take so I can sit in a seat similar to the one that you sit in today? And then the last thing you need to do is determine whether or not you're going to pay that price. Some of you may hear what the price is and say, that's too high of a price. I'm not willing to do that. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but you're just never going to achieve that dream. Some of you are going to take the courage and actually go after it and determine to pay the price. And that's what I would encourage you to do. John Maxwell said this, I love this, talking about someone I admire. He said, people who idolize the privileges of leadership often fail to notice the sacrifice involved. Right? Everyone knows the perks of getting a corner office in a huge high-rise downtown, but no one sees the price that it took to get there. Determined to pay the price while you're young. The next thing that I would tell you, if I could have coffee with you, is to get on a personal growth plan. This is probably the thing I'm most passionate about. Get on a personal growth plan. I've heard it said that growth equals happiness. Growth equals happiness. Think about it. Who are the happiest people on earth? They're the people that are growing. Because again, it's not getting to a destination. It's the journey that's the fun, right? And when let me just tell you, if you see a growing marriage, I'll show you a happy marriage. If you show me a growing company, I'll show you a happy company. If you show me growing individuals, I will show you happy individuals. So you have to get on a plan for personal growth. I didn't know you could grow personally. Again, I hope that you have hope after looking at me right now, right? But I didn't know there was such thing as personal growth. I was 17 years old, and a mentor came into my life that wasn't my father-in-law, and he handed me a CD that was by John Maxwell. I didn't know there was personal growth CDs, but I listened to it, and it was so good. I literally transcribed the entire lesson by hand because I was so fired up. I didn't know that it came with notes. That would have been great, right? But when I was done listening to the lesson, I called the guy that gave me the CD and I said, I felt like has anyone seen The Matrix? I'm getting old. Matrix, all right, at least some of you know what I'm talking about. But I felt like I was Neo in The Matrix, learning Kung Fu. I called him and I'm like, give me everything you got. I want every leadership CD, every book, everything. He gave me binders full of John Maxwell CDs. And for literally 3 years, every single night, every night, no, I did not miss one night, 2 or 3 hours, I'd be listening to John Maxwell CDs over and over and over again. I got so excited about personal growth that I used to have parties at my house all the time to get kids drunk and high. I had all my friends over, and I said, guys, tonight I have something better for you than drugs and alcohol. Like, man, get ready. And they're thinking, like, what do you got? I said, guys, I have the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership on DVD. And we're going to sit here tonight and we're going to watch it and it's going to change your life. You thought you got high on drugs, wait till you watch this. Right? Are you guys anyone feeling my excitement? Oh, they thought I was joking at first and I literally put it in, gave everyone notes to fill in, and they all laughed and went and got drunk and high. But hey, 10 years later, I bet they wish they would have done what I asked them to do. But that's a whole other story. But develop a plan for personal growth. There's no reason you can't grow personally in today's world especially. So my questions for you are, what podcasts are you listening to? After today, you should all subscribe to the L3 Leadership Podcast. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But what podcasts are you listening to? Seriously. If you want to go into sales and marketing, what business and leadership podcasts are you listening to? What books are you reading? What conferences like this are you going to? What leaders are you spending time with? Who is sharpening you? Because here's what I know about growth. You don't always see yourself growing, right? You might listen to podcasts every day, read books, go to conferences, but it's so hard to see yourself grow. It's almost like getting your hair cut, right? You don't see your hair growing every month or every week, every day, but all of a sudden, I need a haircut. I remember a leader I admire, I sat with I was actually an intern at his organization. I was scared of him, right, because he was this big all-star leader, and I was just a lowly intern. But I got to sit next to him at our intern celebration, and I was nervous. I was shaking right next to this great leader. And just so you know, here's how deep my questions were when I was an intern. This was the greatest question I could think of. I looked at him, I'm just like, John, how are you so awesome? That's as deep as it goes. How are you so awesome? And fortunately, he understood what I meant, and he said, Doug, over the past year of your life while you interned here, did you grow a lot? Wow, I've grown leaps and bounds. I can't believe how much I've grown. He said, I've just been doing the same thing for 25 years. Just keep growing. And I would tell you the exact same thing. Just keep growing. You don't realize the compound effect of growth in your life if you're intentional with it. My high school football coach used to say this. It's my favorite quote of all time, actually. He used to say, day-to-day intensity, week-to-week consistency builds champions. Day-to-day intensity, week-to-week consistency builds champions. Just keep showing up every day. Determined to have a plan for growth. The next thing I would tell you if we could have coffee is to develop a network of mentors by adding value. And I'll explain that in a second. But I'll just preface it with this. This specific lesson has the biggest potential for an ROI in your life, right? Like if you execute on this, nothing will give you a higher ROI. So I can't encourage you enough to do this. But develop a network of mentors. Here's what I believe, and I tell people all the time. You're one relationship away from changing your destiny. You are literally one relationship away from changing your destiny. You never know what that one relationship will be. So what do? You have to meet as many people as possible. Get as many mentors as possible. So here's how I learned how to do this, and I'll give you my process for meeting with leaders. But that same leader that gave me a John Maxwell CD used to bring in leaders just like this in settings like this from the community, and they would speak to us. He said, if you're smart as interns, you'll ask that person out to coffee, and you'll be intentional with that relationship and ask them to mentor you and send them lists of questions. And he gave us this whole process. So I started doing that. Anyone he had speak, anyone I saw in the organization that I admired, I would ask out to coffee and ask them to mentor me. I did that for about 10 years, right? Every single month I'd be meeting with leaders. And after 10 years, my peers all started saying, wow, Doug, it's really cool that you got to spend time with this leader and that leader. I wish I could. And I said, have you ever asked? Right? There's a novel thought. And 99% of the time, they've never asked. And so that's when I actually saw an opportunity to start the podcast. I thought, this was in 2012, I thought, what if I just record my conversations with leaders, and then that way it not only adds value to me, but it will add value to the people that listen to it. And so that's literally the only reason I started the podcast, was to help people. So let me give you my process for meeting with people. If you write nothing else down, write this down. Number one, create an ongoing bucket list of business leaders you'd like to connect with, or just leaders in general, really. Create a bucket list of leaders, and don't leave anyone off. Right? I don't have time to teach it, but if you know who Tim Ferriss is, Tim Ferriss occasionally teaches at Stanford, and he actually gives his students a 3-day challenge to get in touch with the most high-profile leader that they can. Right? Mark Zuckerberg, et cetera, Eric Schmidt at Google. And he said 50% of the class doesn't even try because they don't think it's possible. A few people try, and actually 2 or 3 out of every class usually ends up getting an email in or back from one of those leaders. Pretty impressive. But you're literally one person away from pretty much anyone in the world. You'd be surprised who you could get in contact with. So create a bucket list, and then just start asking them. Right? Obviously, it helps if you know the person, but find their contact information, look on LinkedIn, see if you know someone that knows them and ask for an introduction, but actually ask them for 15 to 30 minutes of their time. I used to ask for an hour, and a lot of times they'll give you an hour, but if you ask for an hour, you won't get it. So ask for 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the position, depending on who the person is. Let them know this in the ask. Let them know that you will actually send them a list of questions in advance of your meeting so that they can be prepared for it, and so they'll know that you're not going to waste their time. Right? And again, I'll forget, but if you email me on the Connect cards, I'll send you my list of questions. But I have a basic skeleton list of questions I ask leaders. And then once I find out who I'm meeting with, I'll do a half an hour of research on that person and then develop specific questions based on their journey. But they're already going to see that you're intentional. And then I put create a unique business proposition. Create a unique business proposition. I wouldn't call it that. But for me, it was the podcast interview. And I literally did this by accident. But it's one thing if I ask, right, I'm in fundraising. When I was 27, I wasn't the director of development. I was just entry-level fundraising position. If I asked an executive in one of the towers downtown for a meeting, the likelihood of him saying no is probably 99.9. But if I come from a different angle and I say, hey, leader so-and-so, I'd like to get a meeting with you. I'll actually send you a list of questions in advance. I won't waste your time. I will respect it. And not only will you be adding value to me, I'll also be recording our conversation, and I'm going to put it on a podcast so that everyone who listens to the interview on the podcast, you'll also add value to them. That's a way better ask than, hey, can I meet with you? I'm excited and I want to grow, right? And if you try to do that and don't show up with questions, it's the last meeting you're ever going to get. But again, find out some unique way to add value to them. If you get the interview, I'd mention this, but study them, then create your questions. Be early for the meeting, right? You should always be early. A mentor taught me when I was very young, to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late, and to be late is to be left, right? The leader actually, it wasn't me, but there was another intern. Literally, we were going away on a retreat, and we were pulling out of the organization, and the intern was pulling in, and he just waved at him and made him drive literally hours to the retreat because he was late. Awesome lesson. Anyway, to be late is to be left. But be early for your meeting. Greet them, shake their hand, and say hi. Ask them for what I call an upfront contract. So, hey, you said you were good till 11:30. Is that so good, right? Because then they know you're respecting their time. Here's a bonus that I love. Bring them something they love. Bring them something they love. I learned this from the woman that created Aflac Duck. I don't remember her name, but this story changed my life. It was awesome. But she got an interview with Warren Buffett. I think she was getting 10 minutes with Warren Buffett. So she, in her preparation for the interview, finds out Warren Buffett loves Diet Cherry Coke. So what does she do before her interview? She buys a small cooler, brings a cooler, puts ice in it, goes and buys a glass bottle of Diet Cherry Coke, walks into the interview with Warren Buffett, says, hi, so-and-so, just greeting, and then says, Mr. Buffett, I know you love Diet Cherry Coke, so I just wanted to start this interview with something you love. No joke, Warren Buffett looked at her and he said, young lady, in all my time doing interviews, no one's ever brought me a Diet Cherry Coke. You can have as much time as you want. Gave her an hour and a half. How many of you guys know his time is a lot more valuable than anything else in his life, than his money, etc.? And she got an hour and a half with him because she spent $1.30, right, on an ice cold Diet Cherry Coke. Bring them something they love. What I usually do is I'll ask their assistant, hey, is there anything that they absolutely love that I could buy them, a gift card, a restaurant, etc.? And they'll usually be able to tell you. So find something they love and give it to them. Bring a notebook and take notes. Just so you know, in my heart, I am experiencing great joy for all of you. I do see taking notes. But take notes. Why? Because it's a great way to remember and review what you learned in the meeting. But two, it shows the person that you value their time and their input. If I meet with someone and they're not writing stuff down, it drives me nuts, just to be honest with you. And I can tell you that leaders feel the exact same way. When you take notes, it shows that you're valuing them, and they'll get excited. Because here's what I know. They've made all the money. They have the position. They've made it in life. What leaders at that level want most is to pour into the next generation, right? But they want to pour into people that will actually give them an ROI on their time. John Maxwell actually, I have a mentor in my life that gets mentored by John, and he told him, if you invest in someone and they don't show a return on your investment in 6 months, you've invested in the wrong person, right? These people don't have all the time in the world, and if they're willing to spend time with you, the least thing you could do is take notes. Then at the end of the interview, this question's opened up more doors for me than any other question, but who do you know that I should know? Who are 2 or 3 other leaders that I should interview for the podcast? You'd be shocked at how many doors that has opened. Always ask that at the end of a question. Then to follow up, send them a thank you note with the lessons learned. Don't just say thanks for your time. Hey, thanks for your time. Here are my key takeaways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you so much. Send them a thank you note. And then afterwards, determine if you want to meet again. If you do want to meet again, I would encourage you, 1, to check in with them. Not every day. Don't be annoying. But maybe 6 months later, send them an email and say, hey, here's what you taught me. Here's what I am doing currently with what you taught me. And if you want to meet again, can we meet again? If you do that, 99% of people are going to have another meeting with you. Why? Because nobody does that. Nobody does that. Everyone just wants a meeting with someone so they can say, wow, I met with this cool leader. Aren't I cool? It's like, no, you're not. Execute on it. Anyway, you're cool, but you get it. And then ask for the meeting. If you guys do that, it'll change your life. It'll change the course. Man, all kind of doors will open. Next, be willing to do what others won't do. Be willing to do what others won't do. There was, this is all about setting yourself apart. There was a sign on a grocery store once that I just love this. It said, the 57 rules of success. Number 1, deliver the goods. Number 2, the other 56 don't matter. Deliver the goods. Deliver the goods. The first way you can set yourself apart and being willing to do what others won't do is to actually do your job well. Hit it out of the park. Deliver the goods. If you don't deliver the goods, you're never going to set yourself apart. Leaders will recognize people who do their part and some. So one, deliver the goods. The second thing, this is great advice, but there was a leader who once was meeting with a young leader just starting their first job, and the young leader said, hey, how do I set myself apart? He said, well, when does everyone else go into work? He said, 8 o'clock. And he said, well, that's not when you're going to start. You're going to start at 7:30. You're going to show up at 7:30, a half hour before everyone else. And he said, tell me, when does everyone else leave? And he said, well, 5:30. He's like, not for you. You're going to stay till 6. And you're not going to make a big deal out of it. You're not going to make a ruckus. You're just going to work harder than everyone else, and you'll start to set yourself apart. He said the second thing I would encourage you to do, which I would encourage all of you to do, is get a meeting with the president or the CEO or as high a position as you can in the organization and walk into the room and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, I know you don't know me. I'm literally an entry-level employee. I'm just starting out. But I want you to know, I know I'm not very valuable to you or the company right now because I have no experience and I'm just getting started. But I want you to know, here's my card. Here's my personal cell phone number. There's nothing and no time that you can't call me and ask me to do something that I won't do for you. And right now, the most valuable way that I can add value to you may be to take your dry cleaning to the dry cleaner or get your car washed. But I want you to know that if you ever need anything in this organization done, I'm your guy. And then execute on that and start serving them. Ask them, hey, how can I serve you? Ask your supervisors. That'll set you apart. It will absolutely set you apart. And then act as if you own the company. Guys, when I was young, I was so lazy. Literally, my mentality was others are responsible, so I don't have to be. Right? And unfortunately, a lot of our culture thinks like that today, but that's a whole other story. But, no, anyway. Quiet. But, man, develop an owner's mentality. Develop an owner's mentality, right? Don't be siloed and say, this isn't my job, or this isn't my team, or this isn't our department. Like, think if you were the CEO, because here's what I know. There's a weight that comes with being a CEO or a leader that you'll never know. But you can start to put that on yourself and start to think, if I was sitting in that seat, what would I see? If you see a piece of trash on the ground, pick it up. Right? Just simple things like that. But think about long-term decisions that are being made and just act as if you own the place and add value from that perspective. If you think like that, I promise you will set yourself apart because no one else does that. The next thing I would tell you to do is to get in a mastermind group. As you've heard, I've been growing intentionally every day for the past, 15 or 16 years, and I've been in a mastermind group for the past 3 years. Nothing has helped me grow more than being in a mastermind group. If you're unfamiliar with the concept, there's a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It's an old book, but Napoleon Hill was a man hired by Andrew Carnegie to study the top 50 most influential business leaders of that era for 25 years. Like, that's a long time to study people. And then he wrote this book of what made those people successful. And one common trait was they were all in what he called mastermind alliances. And all that means is a group of 2 or more people that meet on a consistent basis that help each other grow and develop and hold each other accountable to their dreams and goals. You need a group like this. So this is why we created mastermind groups in L3 Leadership. So the way we run them, and again, I encourage you, these are everywhere, or you can start one. I can help you start one. It doesn't matter, but you need to be one. All they are is our groups meet twice a month. They meet for an hour and a half. They're anywhere from 6 to 12 people. We have co-ed groups. We have groups of men and women, right? They all serve different purposes, but they meet for an entire year. In the beginning of the year, everyone shares their top 3 to 10 goals for the year. Hey guys, here's what I'm shooting at. Then every quarter you do a goal review and update people on your progress. And in the meetings in between, it's very, very simple format. Everyone just goes around, shares their wins and what we call a soul check or a gut check. So wins are just, hey, in the past 2 weeks, what progress have you made? What can we celebrate? A gut check is just, how are you doing on a scale of 1 to 10 and why? Right? I've actually, every organization I'm a part of, I make people tell me how they're doing on a scale of 1 to 10. Why? Because most people just say, like, I'm good. Right? Well, tell me how you actually are. Give me a number. And different people have different numbers, but find out how people are actually doing. And then 2 people are in the hot seat every meeting. When you're in the hot seat, it's very simple. You could say, hey guys, I want to start a company, but here's the problem. I have no idea how to start. I don't know anything about legal. I don't know anything about accounting. I just have a vision. Help. And then all of a sudden you have the experience, connections, and relationships with 12 other people who say, hey, I know an attorney. I've been through this process. Let me tell you what to do. And all of a sudden, after 15 minutes, you have a game plan to execute for whatever your goal, your troubleshooting. And that's it. And then we read we are always either reading a book or going through a podcast. We discuss it. And literally, that practice alone has changed my life. So get in a mastermind group or start your own. Oh, I didn't show this in Atlanta, but I love the story. So I watched a documentary on Steven Spielberg. Anyone know who that is? Right? So like in the 80s, they didn't call it a mastermind group, but he was actually in a group of directors with George Lucas, the director of Star Wars, that met every week. And they met every week to challenge each other, to hold each other accountable, to review each other's work. And I didn't realize it, but before the first Star Wars movie came out in 1977, George Lucas played it for his mastermind group. And one of the members of the mastermind group said, George, this is great, but going into the movie, like, I have no context for what's happening. Like, what is going on? And he said, you should put some kind of text up that gives people context for what's happening in the movie. What happened? Da, 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 right? Like that whole text thing came out of a mastermind group. Man, mastermind groups can change your life. Next. Develop your character. This is a personal belief, but I truly believe that the best development is character development. Nothing's more important, especially in today's culture, than developing your character. I mean, you guys are seeing in our culture, man, leaders are falling left and right because of poor character. You need to develop your character. And here's what I want you to know. In life period, and in business, you will attract who you are, not what you want. In life, you will attract who you are, not what you want. Right? I wanted this girl named Laura really, really bad. Right? I wanted to marry her from day one. But who I was not capable of marrying her. Right? It took me 10 years to grow into the man I need to be able to, I mean, again, we dated and things like that, but to be able to be the man that she could see leading her for the rest of her life and be with her and raising her kids, it took a lot of character development in me. Right? You could want to marry this person or that person, but if you aren't that, you aren't going to get that. Right? It's the same thing in business. You could want that job, but if you aren't that, if you don't have the character, if you don't have the integrity, the experience, you're not going to get that position. It's very simple. So you need to develop your character. How do you do that? A few thoughts. Number one is let others speak into you. Let others speak into your life. Here's a great question you should ask for the rest of your life. Who in my life can tell me no that I'll actually listen to? Who in my life can tell me no that I'll actually listen to? My father-in-law for years had to invest in my life. We almost got in fistfights on his deck, etc. But why? Because he was constantly trying to shape me into the man worthy of being his son-in-law. And I had to get to a point where I didn't let pride hold me back, but to say, you know what, you're right. And if I'm going to man up, if I'm going to be the man you need me to be for your daughter, you are right. I need to learn how to handle responsibility better. I need to learn how to love selflessly and all these different things. But I had to let multiple people speak into my life. And I can tell you all kind of stories like that. But get used to feedback. Be teachable. Be teachable. I interviewed the manager of the Pirates, Clint Hurdle. It's one of my favorite interviews. And he said this. He said, as a coach, all I do is give feedback. Right? The players that are all-stars now, I have to get in their face and say, listen, you're not the best player in baseball yet. But if you want to get there, here's some things that you could work on. For the minor leaguers all trying to come up, he said, I have to tell them, you're not ready for the major leagues yet. That's not the best news in the world to receive. And that's going to happen to you in your career. You're going to get news like that. But the question is, what do you do with that feedback? Okay, what do I need to work on to get there? And then here's the thought. Clint said, once they come up from the minors, then the conversation is, hey, the great news is you made it. You're here. The bad news is you got to do good enough to stay here. And it's the same thing in leadership. You may get the position, but then you have to stay in the position. You have to grow into the position. Let others speak into your life and be honest with you. I put the higher you go, the more coaches you'll need to have. And then I just put have standards that are above others. Here's what I know. If you aspire to be a leader, which we've never needed leaders more in our culture, but if you aspire to be a leader, you're an example whether or not you want to be. You're an example whether or not you want to be, and people are watching your life, whether you know it or not. In fact, long before people actually follow you, they're watching you to seeing if you're a leader worth following. And as a leader, you never get to start a sentence with, I want. Right? One of my favorite leadership quotes is, leadership is losing the right to think about yourself. As a leader, you no longer get to think about how your decisions are only going to impact you, because they don't. They impact a whole lot of other people. And if you aspire to be a leader, you have to let go of your selfishness and realize that the only reason, and I'll tell you this, the only reason you should want to become a leader is to better the lives of others. And if you want to be a leader for any other reason than that, then do not get into leadership. The world does not need another leader like that. Lose the right to think about yourself. Put others ahead of yourself and set your standards higher than anyone else. I'll try to wrap up in 5 minutes and then give you guys some Q&A time. So if you have a question you'd like to ask, we'll have probably about 10 minutes for that. So just to throw that at you so you can be thinking about that. But the next thing I would tell you to own is handle failure well. Handle failure well. The question isn't, are you going to fail? Let me tell you, you're going to fail a bazillion times throughout your career. Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an employee, whether you're a leader, you're going to fail multiple times. The question isn't, will you fail? The question is, what are you going to do with your failure? And here's a simple process that I would encourage you to use when it comes to that. Number one, don't find your identity in the failure. Don't find your identity in a failure. You may have done what someone said you did, but that doesn't mean that's who you are. Don't put your identity in something that you did. Learn from it. But I see leaders all the time. They fail once, and it may have been a big failure, but they let that define them for the rest of their lives, and they never get out of that mess, and it tortures them for the rest of their lives, and they stay stuck. Never identify with your failure. Instead, the attitude you need to develop is sometimes you win, and sometimes you learn, right? Sometimes you win, and sometimes you learn. And winning is great, but it isn't sometimes you win, sometimes you fail. Failure is simply an opportunity to learn and get better next time, if you view it that way. And my goal for all of you is that you would develop a pattern and a consistency in who you are, that you handle failure well. In fact, if you develop that, your leaders will love you. If you're a leader that handles failure well and walks through some of these steps I'm sharing with you, listen, you could have major mess ups, but your leader will let you go because they know you're going to recover from it and learn from it. Number two is evaluate the failure. This is very simple, but determine why you failed and what you're going to do differently next time. Next is take 100% ownership. There's a great book out today. It's very popular called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Guy's a beast. Just go watch him on YouTube. Like literally, I watch him while I'm working out because I'm like, man, anyway. People put together motivational, I met him too anyway. Super cool guy. But extreme ownership, take ownership. Ownership, right? Just own it. I like to say this, never ruin an apology with an excuse. Just own it. You failed. Hey, I failed. I totally dropped the ball on this. I'm sorry. It's 100% my fault because as a leader, it is, right? It may have been someone else's fault, but that's not the time to blame and point fingers. You're the leader. Leaders own things, right? And so, hey, it was my fault. I'm sorry. Here's what I'm going to do better next time. Don't sit there and give them 1,000 reasons and excuses and blame, etc. Have a plan for what you're going to do and then execute on it. And again, just do that over and over and over again, and you'll start to build that consistency and character that leaders want to see. Last three, get your finances under control, right? Anyone going to have student loans when they're done here? Anybody? Well, let me introduce you to like one of my favorite people on earth, Dave Ramsey. Has anyone heard of Dave Ramsey? If you haven't, you need to. Again, I'm not a finance guy, but I'm a Dave Ramsey guy. And listen, a lot of you are going to make a lot of money and write his basic principles. Eventually, you'll be beyond his baby steps. But for, I want to say 80% of America, his baby steps are pretty good. So he has a 7-step formula. Again, I'll just run you through the steps really, really quick. But I would really encourage you. He has a program called Financial Peace University. It's $100. Probably the best. I did it when I was 18, probably the best investment ever. And thankfully, my father-in-law paid for it, right? He was shaping me into the man I needed to be. But Financial Peace University. But here's the baby steps. Number one, get a $1,000 emergency fund. Put $1,000 in a bank account, and that serves as your emergency account. Number two is get debt-free, completely debt-free, and determine that you'll never go into debt again. You won't use credit cards. You're not going to finance anything outside of your mortgage. Just make that decision. I'm telling you, the world would be a better place if we all did that. Number three is 3 to 6 months savings in an emergency fund. So whatever you need to live for 6 months, put that in a savings account. Number four is to put 15% of your retirement or of your money that you make into retirement. Number five is fund your kids' 529 plan whenever you have kids. And then number 6 is pay off your mortgage. How many of you guys know if we all did those 6 steps, life would be pretty good, right? Paid off mortgage, retirement's going okay. So, but make this a priority now. Don't wait till you're 30 and your life's a mess and you're even more in debt. Like, he has a podcast with 3 episodes every day. If you want to be inspired to get your financial life in control, listen to that. There's people that call in that are literally, they got a social work degree for $200,000. And now they're going into a nonprofit making $10 an hour. Like, have fun with that, right? But man, get your finances under control. It'll impact your marriage. It'll impact your personal life. Just do it. Next, very similar, but make your health and fitness a priority. Make your health and fitness a priority. I shared this last week, but I was actually a really heavy kid growing up, 250 pounds at my max when I was in 5th grade. So I never wanted to take my shirt off at the pool because of how I looked. I'll just say that. And I finally got the courage to, because I was with all my boys and we were at a swimming pool. And so I walked out with my shirt off, and I had a crush on this girl in 5th grade named Abby Griffith. And Abby Griffith, I didn't know she was at the pool, but she was. And as soon as I walk out of the locker room, just like she doesn't look like a hippo, but like how a hippo comes out of water with like just the eyes, like her head popped up out of water, and she literally screamed, "Ah, he has a bigger chest than I do!" Except for she didn't say chest. And I was in 5th grade. All the guys are laughing. All the girls are saying, "Aw." But I went in the shower and cried for 2 hours. See, I just want to get empathy. Anyway, but cried for 2 hours. But always struggled with my weight. Fast forward, in 2008, I found this program called P90X. Any P90X fans? Tony Horton, my man. So I did P90X. I did it for like 6 months. Thought I was dating Laura. Thought I was in the best shape of my life. Thought I looked hot. Thought I had a six-pack. Went to the pool with her. It was before we were getting married. I took off my shirt. I'm like, her and my father-in-law are going to be like, "Dang, you did good. Like, you've grown so much." But they didn't say anything. And the next day, we went to the Grove City outlets shopping, and Laura was off shopping on her own, and my father-in-law, his armpits were sweaty. He was like nervous. I'm like, "What's wrong, man?" He goes, "We got to talk." And one area he was mentoring me in was boundaries. And he said, "Man, you don't have boundaries, and one area you don't have boundaries in is what you eat." He goes, "Because if you think you look like Tony Horton, like you have another thing coming, you look horrible." And then he took me to a vitamin store and like bought me all these vitamins, which that was kind of weird. But right, so I went home and I'm like, wait a minute, like I think it comes with a nutrition guide, right? Like here's a novel thought, like maybe they do that for a reason. And so I started getting my nutrition under control, and what I learned was 70 to 80% of staying in shape is really what you eat, not working out. But man, get this under control, right? If you want to live a long life, get your health and fitness under control, right? I view fitness as being able to do what you want to do. I don't know about you, but I love hiking. I love national parks. I want to be able to do that with my girls, right? When they're teenagers and when they're in their 20s, I want to be in my 60s and 70s hiking. So what? I'm disciplining myself now daily so I can set myself up to do that. And health is just, hey, I don't want to die when I'm 40, right? I want to be here to see my grandma just died. She was 92. She got to meet her great-great-grandchildren. That's the way to go. Woohoo. Let's get out of here. But take care of yourself. Last two, just quick. Lead to serve others. I talked about this. Zig Ziglar said it best. He said, you can get everything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want. Live your life for others. My mother-in-law used to say it all the time to us. She said, the secret to life is to give your life away. The only reason you should become a leader is to serve. And then lastly is just don't quit. Don't quit. Way too many people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in a decade, right? A lot of you are going to get out and say, why aren't I a CEO? I'm 25. Like, why aren't I the next Mark Zuckerberg? And sure, there's anomalies like that, but that's rare. But just never quit. Never, 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 never give up, right? I did podcasts for 5 years before probably anyone really listened to them. People listen, but not significantly. Right? But what if I would have never continued? Right? You don't know what is on the other side of you not quitting. So I just want to encourage you, if you want to give up in life, don't. If you want to give up on your job, don't. If you want to give up when you're an entrepreneur, don't. And there's times where you have to end things, but just go to the next thing. Just determine in life to never, never, never give up, and things will turn out all right for you. So that's all I have for you today. As I said, I'll open it up for Q&A we have 5 minutes, so not a ton of time. But again, as we part today, if you want to stay connected with L3 and me and what we're doing, you can just fill this out. That could be your gift to us. And I'd love to stay in touch. I love people. So that's it. Does anyone have questions? Thank you.
Well, hey, everyone, thank you so much for listening to the talk. I hope that you enjoyed it and that it added value to your life. You can find the notes, ways to connect with me, and links to everything that we discussed in the show notes at l3leadership.org/episode 210. I want to thank our sponsor, Henny Jewelers. They're a jeweler owned by my friend and mentor, John Henny, and my wife, Laura, and I got our engagement and wedding rings through Henny Jewelers, and we just think they're an incredible organization. Not only do they have great jewelry, but they also invest in people. In fact, they give every engaged couple a book to help them prepare for their marriage, and we just love that. So if you're in need of a good jeweler, check out hennyjewelers.com. As always, you can stay up to date with everything we're doing here at L3 Leadership by signing up for our email list on our website. And when you sign up, you'll actually get a free copy of my ebook, Making the Most of Mentoring, which is my step-by-step guide for getting a meeting with anyone and actually cultivating that relationship into a mentoring relationship. So you'll get that for free for signing up, and I'll encourage you to do that. And as always, I like to end with a quote, and I'll quote Martin Luther King Jr. today. He said this, he said, "All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence." I love that. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of L3 Leadership. I hope that you have a great day. And Lauren, I appreciate you so much, and we will talk to you next episode.